I'm Dave. This is the Cyderbaby show. Out in the sun, as I seem to be very bright here. But today I'm talking to two-fifths of Bison Hip. Hello, sirs.
Hi, how you
Hi
doing?
Dave,
All
how
right?
you doing?
I'm okay. You're looking well. You're looking relaxed. What's it like up where you are?
Dull, but
Fair to mid.
yeah,
Yeah.
fairly dull. Usual Scottish weather,
Yeah.
but it's not cold, so
Oh,
that's good.
We had a couple of days of sun and it felt like summer, so yeah, that's probably it over now.
Yeah, we'll have another couple in 3 or 4 months' time, and that'll do us.
oh, okay. Right. So introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Paul and I'm the singer with Bison Hip.
And I'm John, and I'm the guitarist with Bison.
Right, Bison Hip. They're a new band to me, but I've got to say I did like the album you sent me. It was rather good. Just explain what you're about. What is the band about?
Well, basically, we've kind of, a lot of us have known each other since we were about 17,
Hmm.
17, 18, played in bands together when we were younger. Between the whole lot of us, I think with the exception of Stevie, who plays keys, he seems to be the youngest member of the band at 40, so he was probably about 7 or something like that at the time, so it wasn't an option for him. And then just that whole sort of scenario of when we were going through lockdown, having a Zoom call, just chatting about music and stuff and what we like and what we've been listening to. And I sort of popped the question, why don't we put a band together? We've known each other a long time. We all got on really well.
Hmm.
A lot of laughing and stuff like that about that. You know, oh my God, starting a band when you're 50 odds is not always a good idea. But a couple of whiskies later, we decided let's give it a try.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we charged into within a few days of that, and a couple of weeks of that, we'd written a load of material. We were passing each other stuff all the time, and it took probably the best part of almost a year to get together properly, because one lockdown ended months later, and before we'd got any momentum, there was another one.
Hmm.
But we were back, so it was almost the following spring before we really got together properly. But by that time, we'd written a bunch of songs, and we recorded a couple of EPs, and then a bit later recorded the album that we sent you.
Yeah. Well, to describe your sound, I'd say like the rock end of blues. Is that about?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was in that conversation that we were talking a lot about the kind of music we love the most, and probably rock and blues would be right up there at the top. And we'd been listening to a lot of blues, which is what we're talking about, and just rediscovering a lot of that stuff, like Muddy Waters and stuff. And we definitely wanted some of that influence in there. And one of the things that we did quite consciously was restrict sounds. For example, like my guitar sounds pretty much the same all the way through.
Yeah.
Stevie uses organ sounds, piano sounds, but that's pretty much it. And that restriction was good fun, because it meant that we kind of identified as a proper sound, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, talking about like, we've been real rock fans since we were younger, but
Yeah.
you kind of forget, as you start to sort of strip all the rock music back, you find that there's a lot of blues involved in that, especially from a singing point of view. I mean, I love all the kind of blues, like your White Snakes, all the singing in that's fantastic. I mean, that's kind of the background we've come from. So you kind of go for that rock thing into kind of more of a blues, whether that's because you're getting a bit older that you slow down and you get into a bit more blues, I don't know. But that's how we look at it,
Quite possibly. I mean, you're a similar age to me, and I remember quite vividly Gary Moore moving from like Wild Frontier album and After the War album, then going Still Got the Blues, and that sort of
Yeah.
opened so many doors for me musically. You
Yeah.
just go, wow, I hadn't listened to that, and it just made me search out blues quite a bit more. I mean, how did Gary Moore say influence you at all, or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I came the other way for Gary Moore, as I didn't know much about Gary Moore. It was his blues stuff that I really
Right.
got into. I knew who he was, but I wasn't a big listener until I got to the blues stuff. I was more that how I kind of discovered it was when I was 12. I got really into Bowie, and he was huge at the time. It was more poppy stuff he was doing at the time, like Let's Dance, but the guitarist at that time was Stevie Ray Vaughan, of course. And through listening to that, I then came round to Stevie Ray Vaughan, which is what got me into that. So the time I got to Gary Moore, he was already doing the blues stuff, which is my favourite stuff is.
Yeah.
So blues guitarists have always been, as Paul says, there's that history of rock really kind of comes from the blues, and I've always felt better rock bands have still got a big chunk of that blues in them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, yeah, go on.
No. I was going to start to change the subject. So if you've got something to add, please do.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, that's more on the guitar side of things, but like your David Coverdales, your Paul Rodgers, that I came from all that kind of group when I was younger, and even sort of like your Danny Bowles, who sings with Thunder and stuff like that. I mean, I just love all the vocals of that. It's just like, you know, raw power, and I think merging that with some of the kind of sort of slower blues type things really kind of gives you that good mix of that style, you know.
Yeah. Well, you can certainly hear the style in the album. Older, stronger, better. Go on. What's behind the title? What's the story?
Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty much through the mill through the years. I guess it's just because we're in our 50s now, we've got a lot more to talk about. In terms of, we've always been, more so recently, all about stories within the songs that people can relate to. And I think we're probably at the best we're ever going to be.
Yeah, I hope so.
You know?
We also, there's 3 tracks on the album that have the titles Older, Stronger and Better. And so there was a little one of those moments that we were writing down the titles of the songs and they happened to be sitting next to one another. Yeah. And then we were like, well, that sounds good together. And it made sense in our story as that, yeah, we're older and maybe not physically stronger, but, you know, emotionally and mentally stronger. And against the thing that just we think we're better than we've ever been, probably. So the title worked, but it did come from that. You just happened to notice those 3 words together because they were titles of the song. So it's a little bit of serendipity in that.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, let's go to the opening track. Nothing more, nothing less. It's quite a banger of an opener, really. It's not really taking many prisoners, is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's right in your face. I think again, it just goes back to the fact that when we started doing this, we came up with the idea that we were going to give it everything we possibly could to try and make it work. Even though we wanted to have fun, we're kind of in our 50s, we weren't trying to take it too seriously. But I think once you start the wheels rolling with this thing, you don't leave anything aside. You just got to give it everything. So it's almost like being out of your comfort zone, and just sort of like going with the flow, but 110% every time you do something. So that's the kind of feeling we had when we were doing it,
And that song, the kind of middle section of that song where it veers off into various different solos and things like that was a little bit like that, is that, it felt as if the song was about giving it everything. So we'll get to the middle and everybody should then have an opportunity to do just that. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a banger of an opener, and it's the song we'll be using to open our live stuff as well, because it feels great for that too. So yeah, it's about that. It's about just like, let's go and have a go.
I mean, you certainly covered the range of blues. I mean, blues, you can't say is one particular genre. There's so many different styles, and I think you've pretty much covered that in the whole album, as going all the way through. The One That Got Away, Mercy, they're all different and symptomatic again. What's the story behind Symptomatic?
I think the title came when we were talking about during the pandemic, actually. Talking about that word was everywhere, wasn't it? I'm no symptom, I'm a symptom. We wrote that title, and then it just came from a story that I remember from years ago, just about somebody who when at the start of a relationship, everyone gets a little bit kind of obsessed during that time, and it was kind of about that. This was the title of the song, and how sometimes you can fall so deeply into something. And then we started talking about how you could maybe get a little bit like that about being back into music, because none of us had really been into it that much for a long time. So getting back into music made us feel a little bit like that again, that kind of falling in love thing. So so that was the title of the song, and then everybody just had different ideas for the song, which is why it never quite resolves, and it's got a weird ending and stuff like that. So
it almost feels as if you're falling in love with somebody that you can't actually have by the time it gets to the end of that track.
It's kind of what we were trying to tell that story anyway.
I mean, Doghouse, come on, who did the opening vocals on that? Who was that?
Oh, that was him doing his dog shout, Yeah, his dog's cute.
Yeah, that was a bit of a laugh, really.
It was a
wasn't
bit of a
But
laugh and it stuck.
It's
It's kind of what
So you do
Yeah,
that live as well?
with God, yes. I'm not going to bring a dog on stage for it. I'm going to have to do it myself. That was really an interesting day when we done the video for that. We had John's dogs and try to get them at the start of the video just to even be in it. It was a nightmare. I mean, I think the actual video took us about like an hour and a half to shoot, and the bit with the dogs at the start took us about an hour to try and get that sorted. So
they were excited because there was a lot going on, you know, we were just running around.
So that was a late night frozen shoot that we done for
it
that.
Wasn't as cold as the shoot for Stronger though.
Oh yeah, Stronger was. You had to be real full of metal for the Stronger video.
Okay. Right. Well, all right. We've mentioned Doghouse and Stronger as the two singles. I mean, they're quite polar opposites, really.
Yeah, that was the reason for that. We weren't too sure what would have been able to get played on the radio as such. So we thought, let's give two options. That's why we released both of them at the same time.
Oh, okay, right.
Try and get everyone's interest. And I think with both of those tracks, if you didn't like that one, you would maybe like the other. So it gave us both options to for a listening point of view, you know.
Yeah.
Was it a conscious decision to make a very varied album? You know, you didn't want to be stuck in one particular sound of the blues or rock or two.
I don't think so. I think we always took that decision that even though that it's really difficult, isn't it? Because I think that everybody needs to in some ways pick a genre that they're in. And it's a difficult thing to not be in a genre, right? So we made that decision to be a sort of rock blues band, and that was the sound that we were going to have. But we did also decide that if we write a song and we like it, we're just going to do it. We're not going to say, oh, that's not bluesy enough, or it's not rocky enough, or it's a bit jazzy, or whatever. So no, it wasn't a conscious decision. It just happened to be that the songs that we wrote at the time were like that, and if we liked them, we used them. So yeah, I know what you mean. It does range across a lot of different things at different times, but it wasn't necessarily we want to be doing that. It was more that that's what we wrote, and we just went with it.
I think you can actually go into a project like that and think that you can have an album that's almost got the same sort of concept, but once you start, there's so many influences in the band that you know, cross different bridges of music that it's very hard to have it be one sort of sound.
Making a, you know, I don't want to make a decision on the type of songs or the lyrical content before it. I know there's a lot of bands that like concept albums. It's never a thing I've been a massive fan of, because I always think that when you do that, you've predetermined the subjects of your songs rather than having a bit more of a natural thing. The song takes its own life as you write it. So no, there's no real concept behind it. It was just that's what we wrote and that's how it came out.
Okay, well, I think the album is stronger. It's stronger for it because you've got that much range. You've got everybody's attention at different times, and if with Spotify, you don't exactly listen to complete albums anymore, do you? Just just one here, one there, and another time. And I think you could put this on shuffle, or you could put it on random, or whatever, and you still get a good cross section of music, which is entertaining and therefore makes you want to press the repeat button. So yeah, I compliment you.
Yeah,
songwriting it's brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. If you were to pick one song then, which you think this is us, this is Bison Hip now, which song would it be?
Jesus. That's a question. I think everyone's got a different. You have a favourite. I mean, like people say, every one of your songs is like one of your babies. Each person has an identity to that song. I mean, for me at the moment, it's like This Old City on the track. It's quite a long track, but I feel that every single part of that track takes you on the whole journey right to the end, and it's kind of like a discovery of have I done enough with my life? And you're kind of looking back at yourself and am I happy that I've done and I've made my mark? And that's kind of wrapped around like sort of us all being from Glasgow and living in Glasgow. And no matter where you are, when you go somewhere, you come back to Glasgow and it's pouring a rain and you've got a big smile on your face because you're like, yeah, I'm back. You know, it's no matter what's going on in your life, it seems to sort of wrap its arms around you and kind of cuddle you a wee bit, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my favourite track at the moment, but it moves about constantly.
I think it's hard. I mean, I'd probably say if we were putting the band in front of somebody and we could only give them one track, I'd pick the first track, just because I think it's representative of a lot of different parts of what we do, and there's little subtle moments like Stephen's piano solo, and then there's moments where we're stretching the band a little bit more in the middle, and then there's the lyrics and stuff. It's hard, but maybe right now my favourite song's Older, just because it's so reflective. But it's really hard to do that, isn't it? You know, we've got a lot of songs, and pick your favourite. It probably changes for me every day, but if to represent the band, I'd probably put the first track in front of them.
I would agree.
Yeah. Okay, so what does the future hold for Bison Hip now? I mean, what have you got planned?
Well, we're playing Glasgow Blues Festival a week on Sunday. So that's one of the first gigs of this year, and then we're playing the Willow Festival in July, and then we've got
Cambridge Rock Festival
in August. So we may have another couple of things planned, maybe one in Glasgow and maybe another one in Scotland later on in the year. And then we've got a couple of festivals penciled in already for the start of next year. So hopefully we can build on that, and we'll maybe build some gigs round about that, which will give us an extended sort of UK tour as such for next year. But probably, I mean, already started writing for another album, so we're keen to sort of maybe start recording that at the tail end of this year.
Yeah, it'd be good to do that. We've got material, and it feels like we're not going to stop writing. So I'd like to it would be great to get another record out and then properly tour next year off the back of that and keep building that momentum. But yeah, we'll definitely get more gigs towards the end of the year, and where they'll be yet, we're not really quite decided. But yeah, there's a lot to happen, and you know, we've got the new album, I would say, almost written. You know, so yeah, we want to keep that going and keep that momentum up while we're enjoying it and we're having a good time.
Okay, so what are you guys doing then, just to let off steam? I mean, what sort of gigs and festivals are you going to, just to relax, shall we say, rather than play?
We've got loads of gigs this year. There's a couple of things on. There's a guitarist I really like called Phil Sace, who's coming at the end of the year to the UK, so I'm really looking forward to. I've not seen him before, so I'm looking forward to that. We've got, well, that's next year. John Mayer's next year, isn't it? John Mayer's coming.
Tickets for that.
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel, actually.
Yeah.
Tour, so that I'm looking forward to that one. And I'm also going to see Nothing But Thieves with my daughter. They're a kind of Essex rock band. Amazing vocalist. I mean, the singer in that band is one of the best singers I've ever heard. Right. Vocal range is absolutely amazing. And then just recently, both me and John went to see Beth Hart, which kind of blew my socks off a wee bit in some aspects of it. It was just like, you just never know what's going to happen next, which I like. Yeah. So
we watch a bit of football. We don't necessarily always agree on that, because we are on the opposite sides of the Glasgow divide. So he's a lot happier this year than I am. You know, so we watch a bit of that, and we do lots of stuff. You know, so
for leisure we tend to do more music. It's just the way it goes. You know, that's the thing that relaxes the most, is when you're sitting in your room and just penning some new things and come up with ideas, and then pass them back and forward to each other and get excited about it. So when we're not gigging and stuff, we're still doing it. Right?
Well, we've got a bit of momentum just now. We're having a good time. So you know, when you're at home and you're, what will I do tonight? It feels like, I just want to do more of that. You know, so I'm going to go and work writing or play a bit of guitar, or you know, you mix something, or so. Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
I think when you're kind of almost managing your own band, there's so much to do anyway, you know, you can't stop for a second, especially with social media and all that kind of stuff. You're just constantly up the stuff. So yeah, that probably takes up half the time.
I mean, sure, you're the same for that, Dave. You probably have, you know, that, you know, like you're kind of having to do social media so often that it's almost that in itself was almost a full-time job at times, isn't
It
it?
is. It is. I love and hate social media in equal quantities because I hate having to post all the time. But the only way to, like with bands, the only way to get my name about is to keep posting and keep doing
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just sheer repetition, not of the same stuff, obviously, but
Yeah.
No, and there's never
honestly.
really a day off from it, is there? It's you need
No.
to be doing something, and so we're talking about the gig that we're doing, and we're talking about that every day. But then when we finish talking about that, we're going to be talking about the next thing we do. We've got a little acoustic session coming up, and we'll talk about that. And then that as soon as you move from that, you've got the next. So there's never really an end to that. And in amongst that, trying to promote the band in every way that we can is it's like a full-time job.
It is. I mean, this kind of thing I could do every day, sitting talking about music. So yeah, these are the things that we find pleasure in.
Yeah. One question I forgot to ask. You like producing yourself? Are you recording it yourselves in your own studio, or are you?
Yeah,
go out?
we've got a friend that's got a really good studio. I mean, it's all about environment, and we feel really comfortable in that environment. And we seem to get a really, really good recording, which is the basis, and then everything else is basically John.
Yeah,
I mean, production, mix and master. I mean, he's done an amazing job with the album. I think it sounds fantastic, and
It does.
a lot of really good feedback in terms of the production. So
yeah, that's been great. I mean, it's like I'm not a mixer or a master engineer, so I was worried about that. As like, I'd love to be in a position we could do it ourselves, so that we keep as much of that in. But then, as I thought about it, I'm sure there's a lot of things in there that if you were a mix and master engineer, you'd find flaw with, right? But then maybe that's another. I thought about it as maybe that's just another part of our sound. That maybe that makes us sound different because we all have. Sometimes your limitations are more about how your sound come out. I think when you think back to when you first start playing, you want to emulate your heroes, and I guess your own sound comes from your failure to do that. So I think now less about what I go, oh man, I could have done better with that. I think now that maybe those limitations are part of the sound that we've got now. So yeah, I think I'm all right with that now.
I think we actually recorded the album in a space of a week, so that puts a big limit on everything right from the start. And I love the fact that you have to have a cut-off that you go, well, that's just what it is. I mean, you can always go back and go, oh, I should have done that, I should have done that, but you just got to leave it there. And I like bits of flaws and things, and I don't like everything to be perfect.
I read Rick. I don't know if you've read Rick Rubin's book yet, the producer.
I haven't, no.
It's really interesting, right? Because he's not necessarily talking about specific recordings he's done. He's more talking about his approach to stuff. And he said that if you get to a point where your album's got 5 mistakes, it might not be complete, and you maybe need to get it to 8 mistakes. Right? And I thought, well, that's quite an interesting thing. But he's talking about the human element about that. Yeah. So we did have a kind of idea that we'd go in the studio, and the vast majority of it's done live. So and we've got a maximum amount of 3 takes that we need to get it right in, because there's a point in it, even though even if you had unlimited time, there's a point in it where it's not that exciting after that. Once you've done the 3, 4, 5 times, some of the excitement goes out of it, and you don't want to lose that excitement. So I think that's kind of what he was getting at there, is that worry less about the little mistakes here and there, and more about, did you have the right feeling when you played it? So kind of the approach we took.
That's a good ethos, actually. My son's a sound engineer, and you can just see some of the amounts of layers of music he's putting on just a single track, and you think, okay, that's not real. That's just like manufactured music.
Yeah, so it's a limitless world, isn't it? In that respect, especially you're sitting in front of a computer, and on that computer you've got an emulation of every compressor that ever existed, and you've got every synth you could ever hope for, and again, that's kind of why we came round to this idea of limiting the sound palette for the band, because I've got every possible amplifier on my computer, so I could have the guitar sound in any way I want, and Stevie's got every possible synth sound, so that being almost unlimited, I think maybe it becomes, as you say, kind of manufactured at some point.
I mean, we tried to make sure that what we were actually recording we could just play it live. There was no
Yeah,
band track.
exactly.
There was no additional person needed to play a second guitar or anything like that. So I think it stood us in good stead for that, because we've been rehearsing just recently for the gigs coming up, and it's sounding really, really good. So I'm pretty excited about the festivals coming up.
Yeah,
good. I see you're wearing a Bison Hips shirt, sir. I assume you have a website where merch can be purchased and the CD.
Yes, bisonhip.com. You can buy t-shirts, you can buy tickets for the up and coming festival for Glasgow, and you can download the album.
You can buy the CD.
Ooh.
So anything Bison Hip, go to bisonhip.com and you will be able to enjoy yourself on the CD.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realise how much support it is when you buy a physical CD, because a lot of people are, I mean, I know you're aware, Dave, of what streaming services are and how little they actually do to really support a band. And you know, the streaming for me feels a little bit like advertising. Like you can go and listen to it all here, but really, so you know, anyone who's buying a CD or a T-shirt from us is supporting us massively when they do that. You know?
Yeah, don't get me started on Spotify, please. We'll be here for
You
hours.
got that thing, yeah. Well, it's a necessary evil, and but I think if you can look at it, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I didn't realise that still 35% of the music industry is physical. So there are people out there supporting bands properly, and merch and physical CDs are how you do it. Come along to the show and go and see a band, and when you go along, and if you like them, buy their T-shirt, buy their CD, because you're doing a massive thing for them when you do that.
Okay, well, thank you for your time today, chaps. It's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I shall be trying to champion a couple of tracks on my radio shows in the morning. Which ones I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if everybody's ready for Doghouse. That howling at the start, I think, you know, I'll do a breakfast show. I mean, that could scare the wits out of everybody.
That's a wakener.
Yeah, that'll get your coffee and your coffee all screaming at you. It'll get you moving in the morning.
Okay, thank you guys.
Cheers, been a pleasure, Dave.
Cheers.